Welcome back, everyone. It is good to see you all. Today we're going to talk about first aid kit stuff, but in particular, we're going to talk about stuff that rolls. There is so much stuff that rolls. We're not really going to talk about this one. We are going to talk about this one. This is new. I hadn't seen this before. There is so much stuff that rolls, and it is all very similar. I want to talk about the differences and what they are and what you should be putting in your first aid kit. Rolled first aid stuff. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. Good to see you all. We haven't talked about first aid kits in a while, and I wanted to, as I'm repacking one, and I realized I'm missing something. For some reason, I have no full-size ACE wrap. I'm sure it is somewhere, but I don't know where it is. This just sort of reiterates the importance of going through your kits a couple times a year to make sure they're complete. I know I didn't lose it, but I don't know where it is. So, go through your kits a couple times a year. Make sure you've got all the stuff that you need. I'm going to say this at the beginning of the video. If you email me, I will send you my full Expedition First Aid Kit contents list. It's not what you need in like a daily first aid kit, but it'll give you ideas of the sort of stuff that I put in. Really big kits. I build kits for people who are doing like sailing across an ocean or overlanding in really extreme places. And the kits are expensive, but it comes with a lot of stuff. And this thing I might be adding. We'll talk about that thing in just a couple minutes. So I want to talk about what I've got here. Then we're going to stretch them all out and sort of compare the differences. There's a lot of overlap. There are some things that I've got in front of me that I'm not going to talk about. I am not going to talk about SAM splints. I really like SAM splints. Wait, I'm talking about it. I really like SAM splints. They're awesome devices. A lot of backpackers don't carry them because they weigh something. As a paddler, I don't care, but you can do an arm splint. You can do an ankle splint with them really well. It is a really great splinting device. And it's super cool because the name SAM is both an acronym, Structural Aluminum Malleable, and also the name of the doctor who invented it. So we're not really going to talk about those. If you want me to do a video about those, let me know down in the comments. But we're not going to talk about this. This is very thick rolled gauze. This is for like a heavy bleed or an abdominal bleed. This is also sterile. In general, I don't pack sterile stuff in first aid kits. Aid kits, I am not quite sure where I got this or when. I'm not going to talk about this kind of rolled gauze. It's just like, it's too much for a normal first aid kit. That's like something you'd find in an ER. I am going to talk about this rolled gauze, which I absolutely love in first aid kits. You give me this and some 4x4s and I can fix just about anything. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this, which is Coban, also called Vet Wrap. It comes in nice colors if you buy it as Vet Wrap as opposed to Coban. We're going to talk about this. Let me get it out of the box. I don't know why I didn't already. This is Leuko tape, and we're going to talk about KT tape. These actually do the same things or have the same uses. There are some slight differences, so let's compare those. We're going to talk about this, which is cover roll, and it's a little stretchy. It's similar in usage to these guys, to the KT and the Leuko, but not as thick, and we'll talk about all these in detail. And then we're going to talk about Duct-aid, which is a new product that I discovered online. So we're going to talk about these items, these five items specifically. If you want me to talk about the other stuff, I'm happy to do that too. Just leave a comment down below and we'll do that. Winning the award for the most ridiculous setup I've ever built in my life, we have 6 different rolls of rolled material. KT tape is here, Leuko tape is here, cover stretch is here, Duct-aid is here, and then these two are a little bit different, roller gauze and Coban. These are the biggies that I want to talk about. So let's talk about these first and get them done. Roller gauze I use for covering a wound site, normally with like a 4x4 over the wound and then wrap it in roller gauze. It's just a good way to protect what you've dealt with as a wound in the backcountry. You could also use Coban for that. And the nice thing about the Coban, I don't know if you can see it, but the way that I held it here in place was that it sticks to itself. It's really nice. It's really wide. You can get it in good colors. This is super stretchy. Has a better elasticity, but is not as stretchy as this. This has tons of uses for sort of wound covering and blood stopping as well. So really, I would put both of these in my first aid kit. I do put both of these in my first aid kits, but they can do the same thing, but they also do some other things better. The Coban is really good at protecting. Like, I might put roller gauze on it and then do a wrap of Coban because it's going to protect it a little bit better. It's a little bit more durable. It's just a really great product. So these are a little bit more wound care, wound covering. To sort of illustrate how much overlap there is here, this is also good for wound covering, but I don't think it works well as either of these. Certainly not as good as Coban. This is the cover wrap stuff. This is not really something that is normally in my first aid kit. Honestly, I saw it when I was ordering the Leuko tape. I was like, oh, I think I know what that is. So let's grab a roll of it so we can talk about it. This is more frequently seen in hospitals and is frequently like after you give blood, they'll put something over it and then cover it with that. Though you can do that with Coban as well. See, that's all the overlap. On this end, we've got KT tape and we've got Leuko tape. Both of them are used for sort of the same thing, which is covering like a blister or a hot spot or something like that. The nice thing, the reason that I like the KT tape more than the Leuko tape is the KT tape is stretchier than the Leuko tape, which means this is going to bend and conform better to shapes like parts of your body, fingers and toes and things like that. This is used frequently for wrapping toes in like adventure races and things like that. I am a big fan of this. And I'll tell you what, I also use it in place of Coban. I will put a piece of gauze over a wound site. And then if I feel like I'm in a wet environment or I'm going to be sweating or something, instead of wrapping it in roller gauze, I'll cover it in KT tape. And it's a really nice sticky level. It's a bit stickier. Actually, no, it's about the same sticky as the Leuko. I thought my brain was saying it was a little stickier, but it's actually not. It's about the same. I really like the KT tape. I'll put prices for all of these up on the screen when we're done with this. And then what really started this whole process was I saw an ad for this product on Instagram. This is called Duct-aid. There's one thing about this that I think is really cool. There's one thing about this that I really don't like. The thing that about this that I think is really cool is there are patterns printed on it that you can cut for fingertips, small dressings, medium dressings, and butterflies. And with a pair of scissors, you can create those using this. That is brilliant. I think that's really smart. The downside of this is that the glue is not very sticky, particularly compared to the KT tape or the Leuko tape. It's just not that sticky. I'm sure it works fine. As I said, this is a new product to me, so I haven't had a chance to use it. I'm sure it works pretty well. The other thing about it is that the roll itself, the core is pretty small, so it'll pack really well in a first aid kit. I might throw this in a first aid kit, but because it's not terribly sticky, I'm worried about it not adhering well, particularly on someone who is sweating. If you do have someone sweating, I did once have the KT tape, which is very sticky, not want to stick to me because I was sweaty. I hit the area with alcohol prep pad and just let it evaporate, and then it stuck, which works really well. KT tape is pretty much my go-to for a lot of things. Leuko tape I don't like quite as much because it doesn't stretch as much. This is more used in hospitals. This I'm going to start working into rotation in first aid kits, and I don't know, maybe I'll be lucky or unlucky and get a chance to try it out. These are always in my first aid kits. So always, 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 maybe is sort of how I look at these. Now, I will say a good thing to have if you're using any of these is a good pair of trauma shears. I don't like the Leatherman trauma shears. They're way too heavy. They're way too expensive. These are what I consider as good as it gets for trauma shears. They are titanium. They are big. They will cut just about anything. They're like $20. works. So I highly recommend a good pair of trauma shears, and you do really need them for most of these. KT tape has a backing on it, so you need to cut it and then peel it. It is very thin. It is very stretchy. Stretches better in that orientation than that orientation, but that's okay. This works really well on fingers and toes or anything like that. Huge fan, but you do have to peel a backing on it. Leuko tape does not have a backing. And it also does tear pretty easily. That's a nice product. I prefer the stretchiness of the KT tape, but that is still a very nice product. I would be more likely to probably try and wrap an ankle with Leuko tape than I would with the KT tape. The KT tape is probably a little too stretchy. The cover roll, let's see how hard that is to tear. Yeah, that does not tear. You definitely need scissors for this, or trauma shears. Boy, that really didn't even cut all that well. And then it's got two pieces that you pull off of it before applying it. No real stretch, even though the name is cover roll stretch. This stretches side to side better than it stretches lengthwise. And it's kind of like a cloth paper tape, if that makes sense. It does stick well to skin. Yeah, maybe I'll give this a shot. It's new to me, just for education purposes. KT tape stuck to skin. Very sticky, super nice. Leuko tape stuck to skin. Similar to the other two, maybe not quite as sticky as the KT tape. Maybe it is. It's very close. The biggest difference between those two is the stretch. I'm going to cut off a piece of this. Does it tear? It does tear pretty nicely, just like regular duct tape. Let's see how it does on skin. And if it's cold or something like that, this is true of any of these, rubbing them will warm up the glue and help it work well. That actually works really well. It works better than I thought, but only once. Yeah, I prefer the stickiness of the KT tape on that guy. But let's try something else, which is, let's make a fingertip butterfly and see if I can without instructions. So like you could have a medium dressing and just cover a wound site with maybe a little piece of gauze under it with that, or small dressing, and then these are tiny butterflies. Those are very small butterflies, but I want the bigger butterfly. I want this guy. So I cut it along the black marks. There are dashed lines, does it say? KT Duct-aid. So I checked YouTube, and there is a Duct-aid channel where they talk about the product, but they don't talk about usage. So I'm not sure. My brain is saying to cut on the dotted lines, but I'm not positive. And apparently there is an app that will tell you all sorts of first aid stuff. This is probably not right, but let's give it a shot. That actually worked pretty well. I would cut a little bit more, but there you go. I would cut the solid lines too. I'm guessing that that's right, but they're missing the boat. They've got a YouTube channel, doesn't have a whole lot of views, and doesn't show specifically how to use Duct-aid. And it talks a lot. They also sell a first aid kit. And also this video that I just watched, which seems to be the only video on their channel. Let me double check that. Yeah, their YouTube channel is Duct-aid with a hyphen between duct and aid. The only video is the one I just watched, which does not show how to use it. It's an interesting product. I like the size of it. I like that the core is small. I'll throw it in my kit. I think it's pretty good, pretty good product. I don't know that it will replace the other stuff I use, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm fairly impressed with it. I don't think that that's bad. Duct-aid with a hyphen. As I'm about to roll this onto myself, I do want to point out there is a right way, believe it or not, a right way and a wrong way to use rolled materials, particularly in first aid. You want to have it in this orientation when you roll it out onto someone, not this orientation. This way you're going to fumble and drop it. I don't know if I can do this one-handed. So that is really nice. If this was going over a wound, I would probably, I would put a 4x4 on top of the wound site. And then it stays there really well. That's super nice. I really like that. I have used almost this entire roll just doing those two things. So the rolls are kind of small, and it was a brand new roll, and it's not cheap. But I'll tell you a secret. If you buy vet wrap, it is cheaper than buying Coban, and it comes in good colors. So that's something to keep in mind. And then similarly, if I had a wound here, I could wrap it in roller gauze. Tension it a little bit. This will not really tear. I'm going to use this whole roll. This will not really tear. So you really need trauma shears to cut this, right? And then it doesn't stick to itself. So you could use that cover tape that I was talking about to tape it in place. But honestly, what I do is pull it tight, jam it under there. But super common, like what you'll see in an emergency room, is they'll finish it like that. So that's a good way to use roller gauze. The beauty of trauma shears. So as I said, there's a lot of overlap between these products, and it can be very confusing, which is why I wanted to make this video. I have now made a huge mess in here that I have to clean up. If you want to support this channel, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. You can also buy me a coffee on Coffee. Links are down below. If you want a copy of that Expedition First Aid list, email me, brett@adventureotaku.com. I am happy to send that to you and answer questions. I do that all the time. I literally sent out a copy of it to a student from a WFA class this morning. So that's super common. Don't worry about that. There's lots of things to use here. If you can, play with them and sort of see what works best for you. For me, it's a bunch of things depending on the usage. As I said, every first aid kit has Coban. Every first aid kit has roller gauze. Every first aid kit has KT tape. And now maybe every first aid kit will have Duct-aid, because I kind of like it. It's kind of cool. And always have trauma shears. If you want to talk about things like the big gauze that I talked about before, or SAM splints, we could do a video on SAM splints. I'm a big fan. A lot of people aren't, but I think they're great. Leave a comment down below. Check your first aid kit twice a year so you're not missing your ACE wrap like I am. If you want to see a video about ACE wraps, I'm happy to do that. I was going to include it, but couldn't find it. So I now need to order some. I hope you don't have to use your first aid kit, but if you do, know what's in it, make sure it's up to date. And remember, no one ever said, boy, am I glad I didn't pack that first aid kit. Okay, I'll see you outside. So much garbage in first aid land.